Hello, this is likely the last video of the year. I was going to film a regretful parents reaction, but I didn't want to end the year on that note. So I thought a while back I've recorded a video about my favorite book, Jane Eyre, and you can watch it here. So I thought, why don't I make a video about another beloved novel, Pride and Prejudice. This timeless classic by Jane Austen was published in the early 1800s, but much has been said and written about it. And I don't want to be yet another person talking about the author's subtle critiques of the rigid class system of 19th century England, or about the societal norms surrounding women and marriage. That's all fine, and you'll find many videos about that already. But Jane Austen's work is so much more. It kind of annoys me when people fixate on these aspects only. So, in honor of Jane Austen's birthday, which was on December 16, which is also my mom's birthday, I love you, Mom, buckle up for my take on Pride and Prejudice. Because on this channel, we talk about motherhood, regretful parents, even libertarianism, but always through the lens of personal growth. Because like Mr. Collins, the clergyman, we are flawed human beings, but at least we're trying, right? Subscribe. First of all, some context for those of you who've never read the book or barely remember it. This novel tells the story of Elizabeth Bennet, a 20-something-year-old unmarried, second daughter of a family of 5 young ladies in Regency, England. Her father, Mr. Bennet, is not exactly wealthy, but he has a modest property and is capable of keeping a few servants. Because he has no male heirs, his daughters won't get to keep any of his estate. Therefore, Elizabeth's mom, Mrs. Bennet, is kind of desperate. She really wants to marry her daughters, and she's quite vulgar about it, for 19th century British standards. I appreciate her though, because she's funny, and being neurotic myself, I understand her urgency, and it's kind of crazy if you think about it, that she's the only one that is impatient about it. The girls are like just chill and, careless and not worried at all that they can potentially be homeless in the future. Anyways, the novel starts when they get news that a gentleman named Mr. Bingley, a wealthy gentleman, is coming to Hertfordshire, where the novel takes place, and he brings his 2 sisters, his brother-in-law, and another friend, Mr. Darcy, and they stay in the area. They go to balls and dances and get acquainted with the folks that live there, and the novel shows how Elizabeth and Darcy's romance evolves from indifference, admiration, and ardent love on his part, and on her part, hate, more hate, and the realization that she was wrong all along and that he is in fact the man of her dreams. Elizabeth's sister Jane also falls in love with Mr. Bingley, and a lot of things happen, but they end up together in the end. It's a delightful read. It shows how our preconceptions can be wrong, and it has a happy ending, and the characters are beautifully developed. Anyway, highly recommend the book, and the 2005 movie adaptation by Joe Wright is just gorgeous. Moving on. 3 things are necessary if you want to become a better person and have better relationships: self-awareness, humility, and accountability. That's why narcissists fail so miserably in these areas. They think so highly of themselves, they are incapable of seeing their own shortcomings. And then when they're faced with failure, they blame everybody else but themselves. They never take accountability. And that's recipe for disastrous relationships and crappy personalities. And because we don't want to be that, this is how these 3 characteristics show up in the book so we can learn from them. Self-awareness. In Pride and Prejudice, self-awareness is almost like its own character, always lurking in the background, waiting to either make or break a character's reputation. Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, for example, for most of the novel seems like the poster child of unaware, misunderstood genius. His early arrogance and also like awkwardness comes off as so unshakable that it feels almost like a personality flaw. Well, it is a personality flaw, but until he realizes in that famously awkward confession to Elizabeth just how much he has misunderstood her and everyone else. So Darcy's self-awareness is not instant, but when it hits really hard. He goes to Elizabeth and confesses that he's in love with her, and he's quite sure that she's gonna be like, yes, me too, and he, ends up being completely wrong. So he comes to understand that his belief in his own superiority has been a barrier to understanding others, particularly Elizabeth. And he shows the most emotional growth after being rejected by her, even offering to help Elizabeth's sister, Lydia, when she runs away with someone. I'll tell you about it later. Anyways, Elizabeth Bennet herself, she has perhaps the sharpest mind of all characters. She often catches her own contradictions before anybody else. She's very self-aware. For instance, the iconic moment when Elizabeth realizes that she has misjudged Darcy all along. I'm talking about the letter. After she rejects his proposal, he writes her a letter explaining everything. And that's when she realizes, oh, I was wrong about him. Up until that point, she's convinced he's the epitome of pride and arrogance. But when she reads his letter, she has one of those wait a minute realizations. Jane Bennet, Elizabeth's older sister, always assumes good intentions to everyone. In her unwavering goodness, she never truly acknowledges the pain of her unrequited love for Mr. Bingley until much later in the book. And even then, her inside is gentle and forgiving. It's almost like she's too sweet to indulge in a deep self-reflection, and that might make her seem less than perfect. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, she's a very wealthy lady. She's aunt to Mr. Darcy, and she offers a delightful, contrasting form of self-awareness, or lack thereof. In her desperate attempt to take control of everybody's lives, she's convinced of her own superiority. She's so convinced that she can't even fathom the idea of Elizabeth rejecting her interference. She tries to interfere in Elizabeth's relationship with Darcy because she wants Darcy to marry her daughter, and Elizabeth is not agreeable. Like, she's not like, I'm not gonna say yes to you, lady. I don't care who you are. Like, fuck off. Anyways, her sense of self-awareness is underdeveloped, undoubtedly, and she gets really offended when Elizabeth tells her no, kind of like the opposite of Darcy. Anyways, Mr. Collins is a distant cousin that is gonna to inherit the estate of Mr. Bennet, Elizabeth's father. So he comes to their house and meets the girls and intends to marry one of them. He goes for Jane, but she's already into Mr. Bingley, and so her mom goes like, Elizabeth is single, and he goes to Elizabeth, and yet again, she declines his proposal. He is also a painfully unaware character. Also funny, it's crazy how unaware he is that every single word that he's saying on that proposal is unwelcome. And Elizabeth tries to stop him, and he doesn't stop, and it's just painful. Poor guy. Number 2, humility. Humility is the quality of being modest and having a low view of one's importance. It involves recognizing your own limitations and not seeking to elevate yourself above others. It's a quality tightly tied with openness to learn. After initially rejecting Elizabeth due to her lower social standing, Darcy undergoes a transformation, particularly after interacting with her and realizing how arrogant he was and how awesome she is and intelligent and pleasing. So after Elizabeth rejects his first proposal, which by the way was awful, he actually says he loves her against his better judgment. Of course she says no. Darcy gets really mad, but with time he humbly acknowledges his faults and acts in a way that shows a greater sensitivity to others' feelings. So this is what he has to say after being rejected and learning from it. By you, I was properly humbled. I came to you without a doubt of my reception. You showed me how insufficient were all my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased. Yeah, this quote shows humility. Accountability. Have you ever heard a lame apology from a celebrity or politician? I'm sure you have. Something along the lines of, I'm so sorry if the way I've acted have offended anyone. It's not my fault that I'm so misunderstood. Like completely out of touch. Almost sounding like, I'm sorry that you didn't let me get away with this awful behavior. We know you don't mean it. We know you're not accountable. You don't even get why people got upset. Either own up to it or don't say anything at all. Accountability is when you take it upon yourself to do something and you actually do it. And you own up to your mistakes along the way and try to be better. Like really, really try to not make any more mistakes. That's accountability. Nothing like how this particular character lives her life. And of course, I'm talking about Lydia Bennet, Elizabeth's reckless younger sister that at one point runs away with a militia officer called Mr. Wickham. She runs off with the guy at 15 without any care for what her family is going to think, how worried they might get, how her reputation will be destroyed in 19th century Regency era. Not only her reputation, but her whole family's reputation. Or even how she's gonna survive. Absolutely idiotic behavior. Her lack of accountability and self-awareness is one of psychopath almost. It's not until the family is on the brink of ruin that she's forced to own up to her mistake. And it feels like even then, she doesn't get it. You know, at its core, Pride and Prejudice is about owning up to mistakes, whether it's Darcy letting go of his pride, Elizabeth reassessing her judgment, or even Lydia facing the aftermath of her reckless behavior. It shows that real growth happens when we take accountability for our actions and their effects on people around us, no matter how hard it might be. Thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure to talk about this beloved book with you. Hope you enjoyed it. Also, thank you for coming along this year, for subscribing, commenting, liking, and I wish you a very happy Christmas and holiday season. See you next year. Bye-bye. Interessante. Talvez é melhor que só aquela porta. Olivia?
Só
Olivia?
a porta?
Talvez é melhor que a porta, Olivia. Não é brinquedo, eu acho. Olha.